Hello everyone, welcome to Anime No Me, and thank you for joining us for another One Piece video. Zoro is a great swordsman, and he has two incredible swords which are just below the highest rating of swords in the world of One Piece, namely Enma and the Wado Ichimonji. This means our three-bladed swordsman has just one more sword to find to be able to be strong enough to compare with the swords of the best swordsman and greatest swordsman in the world, which in this case is Yoru that belongs to Hawkeye Mihawk. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the possibility of Zoro getting a supreme grade sword, how he might get that sword, and how strong Zoro will be once he has possession of that sword. But before we dive into the video, if you're new to the channel or even if you've watched a bunch of our videos, we'd be absolutely honored if you'd leave us a like and even subscribe and maybe leave us a comment letting us know what you thought of the video. It really helps us out, especially with that old YouTube algorithm, and it continues to motivate us to make more content. If you'd like to help out the channel in a bigger way, consider sharing this video or another one of your favorites with a friend. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So my friends, Zoro has three powerful swords already at his disposal. Of course, he has the Wado Ichimonji, which is one of the 21 great grade swords, and the masterpiece of the legendary blacksmith Shimotsuki Kozaburo. Next, he has the Sandai Kitetsu, which is the third of the Kitetsu set that was created by Tengoyama Hitetsu. And finally, his greatest sword is Enma, another one of Kozaburo's masterpieces, and also one of the 21 great grade blades. Now, two of these swords have the second highest rating among all swords in the world, these being Enma and the Wado Ichimonji, while the Sandai Kitetsu is still very good, but is ranked as a skillful grade blade, which is the third tier that comprises 50 different swords. Throughout the story of One Piece, while Zoro has faced powerful enemies, it was possible to see that Enma and especially the Wado Ichimonji had the possibility of evolving even more, which would mean that they could become Saijo o Wazamono, also known as the supreme grade swords. This is the highest level that any sword can reach in the world, and right now there are only 12 swords in the category. Now we've seen 4 of these presented in the work so far. We have one of the swords that I already mentioned, Yoru, that belongs to Dracula Mihawk. We have the Shodai Kitetsu, the Mura Komorogiri that belonged to Edward Newgate and is now with his tombstone, and the sword Ace that once belonged to Goldie Roger, whose whereabouts are currently unknown. Now, the Wado Ichimonji is a sword of great personal significance to Roronoa Zoro, and it once belonged to Kuina and her family, and it's also one of the 21 great grade swords. After Kuina's death, Zoro asked his father to carry the sword so that he could fulfill both his and Kuina's dream of becoming the greatest swordsman in the world. Now, we're not suggesting that Zoro would still swap out these swords, because there's no way he would ever part with the Wado Ichimonji, nor would he part with Enma, especially with what he went through to gain control of it. So there has to be a possibility that these swords are going to evolve as Zoro's skills evolve. However, the Sandai Kitetsu is a sword that has been causing a little trouble here and there for Zoro. It's not a very powerful sword, and it could be possible that it's broken by a future and very powerful enemy. Because of its level, the sword doesn't have the same kind of durability compared to Zoro's other swords. I mean, not even its cut is as sharp as Enma or the Wado Ichimonji, which means that Zoro has got to change the sword out for something much stronger in the future. If he were to possibly come across a supreme grade sword, this is not outside the realm of possibility. I mean, there are 8 swords that have yet to be shown in the work of One Piece, and one of these swords could be obtained by Zoro during some adventure in search of the One Piece. Since we know next to nothing about the other supreme grade swords, we could speculate about one that we do know about, and that's the possibility that Zoro could obtain the Shodai Kitetsu. Now, the Shodai is a cursed sword just like its brother, the Sandai Kitetsu, but a much more powerful and durable version. And as it's a cursed sword, this might arouse Zoro's curiosity about replacing his current sword with kind of its big brother, thus fortifying and empowering him all the more. So since we can't speculate on a possible third sword, let's talk about the other two. Now, we've talked a little bit about the Wado Ichimonji, and it is one of the most powerful swords in the world, second only to Enma. And because Zoro's had this sword for so long, he's been able to bond with it and really make a connection with it. We've also had a scene with Tashigi, who is a world-renowned sword expert, describe the Wado Ichimonji as a magnificent katana of the highest caliber, being an extremely powerful sword, which in the right hands could become extremely dangerous. But getting back to the relationship that Zoro has with this weapon, because Zoro has had such a long time to forge a bond with this weapon, and added on the fact that we've learned that swords seem to have an essence or a spirit or a soul, this deep relationship that Zoro has with the Wado Ichimonji has allowed him to overcome his limits all the more when he's wielding it. Possibly being it's this relationship that has allowed the sword to evolve and cut more and more, and could go even further in a yet unknown way. Consider for a moment the fact that way back when Zoro first encountered Mihawk, he was able to withstand an attack from Yoru using the Wado Ichimonji, all without using Haki, because Haki was unknown at the time. And Yoru could be considered the strongest supreme grade sword, and is a black blade. And this black blade did shatter the other two swords that Zoro had in his hands. Yet the Wado Ichimonji stood and did not break. Considering this was all done without Haki, this demonstrates that the sword could be one of the greatest and most durable among the swords, managing to take attacks from supreme grade swords without suffering any deformity in the blade or visible damage. Another thing to consider pre-Haki is the fact that Zoro demonstrated the ability to cut through steel with this sword, and as he's advanced his Haki levels and further develops his Conqueror's Haki, this is going to strengthen the resistance and cutting power of the blade even more. And this isn't the only feat or sword that the Wado Ichimonji has faced. In another battle, it was able to take on Shusui, this being a renowned black blade wielded by a zombified samurai, the reanimated Shimotsuki Ryuma that had been revived with Brook's shadow. And this battle went on for quite a long time, although Zoro did worry that his katana might break if the battle went on too long. After the time skipped, and after Zoro had managed to add Haki to his repertoire, as well as adding armament Haki to his swords, the Wado Ichimonji's power and defense was amplified many fold, and had increased to the point of being able to slash Pika in his gigantic form and taking him down, even though he had been completely coated in Haki. Another interesting thing to note as well is that Kozuki Sukiyaki said that because the Wado Ichimonji and Enma were forged by the same person, it allowed Zoro to get used to Enma much more quickly during the time he spent training with it. This probably because the Wado Ichimonji spirit was able to kind of introduce Zoro to Enma and gain its trust a lot quicker. And with Enma on his side, he managed to injure Kaido, having empowered it with his Conqueror's Haki and armament Haki, using his 9-sword style Ashura technique. This gave Kaido that permanent scar that nobody other than Kazuki Oden had given him. So now that Zoro has obtained Enma, another sword created by the same person that created the Wado Ichimonji, it's gonna give him the ability to use these two swords much more in sync, even if the Wado Ichimonji and Enma didn't come from the same set and time of forging. Now to take a moment and talk about Enma. Enma is one of the 21 great grade swords, and it's said that this sword also has the ability to evolve further into something more of a supreme grade sword. So if Zoro was able to make that bond with the Wado Ichimonji and Enma, he would end up with 2 supreme grade swords in the future. We saw that Enma in the hands of Oden had the ability to hurt Kaido, something which other swords couldn't do at the same time. And Kaido had that just amazing dragon-like resistance where even Luffy's most powerful punches in Gear 4 just couldn't hurt him. Enma is the masterpiece of the legendary swordsmith Shimotsuki Kozaburo, and because of that, Enma ranks among the finest swords in the world, with Kozuki Hiyori deeming it a worthy replacement even for the legendary Shusui. Kozuki Sukiyaki described Enma as being able to cut to the very depths of hell, paralleling its twin sword, the Ame no Habakiri, being able to cut through heaven itself. Although we don't know if this is symbology or could have a deeper meaning. Perhaps there's a hidden power in this sword, capable of making it burn with the flames of the underworld, or something similar that could only be awakened after the sword's been managed to unlock the full potential of the sword, which is something really interesting to think about and speculate. We've seen that Enma possesses far superior power than its twin, the Ame no Habakiri. Kozaburo himself considered Enma his greatest masterpiece compared to all the other creations that he had ever done, including the Wado Ichimonji. We've also seen Enma used to confront 2 supreme grade swords in the past, proving to be a sword that borders on the same level as a supreme grade sword. So at this point, all Enma really needs is to be in the hands of a powerful swordsman and have it be used in a way that helps it evolve to become one of the strongest swords in the world. In fact, in the past, Oden might have already helped this process along, because with Enma, he had already managed to confront the Murakumara Giri that was wielded by Whitebeard, as well as Ace that had been wielded by the King of the Pirates, Goldie Roger. Another distinctive trait and rather curious one is the fact that Enma has the ability to absorb its wielder's Haki, and is then able to release that armament Haki in the form of Ryo, as we saw it did in Wano, and it does it in excessive amounts to the point that it cuts more than it's supposed to. But this is also a perfect situation for Zoro for him to tame this blade, because now that he has the ability to use all 3 types of Haki, he absolutely has the potential to evolve this sword and make it one of those supreme swords. swords. So as we can see, Zoro already has two incredible swords with pretty much unlimited potential, leaving only for him to need a third and more powerful sword so that he can really expand his skills as far as possible. And it might be this third sword that is absolutely critical to enable him to have the amount of power and durability to take on and defeat Mihawk in the future, so that Zoro can indeed one day become the greatest swordsman in the world. But with all that said, my friends, we'd now love to know what you think about it. Do you think Zoro might need that third sword because the Sandai Katetsu might actually get broken? Next, what do you think the next sword would be? Would it be something that comes out of the woodwork, or would it be one of these other unnamed supreme grade swords we have yet to see in the story? And finally, many of us in the community have speculated that Zoro will turn one or more of his swords into black blades. Do you think that that's going to happen before he meets up with Mihawk during the battle, or that will be the prize once he unseats the greatest swordsman in the world? Let us know what you think about all this in the comments below. So as we wrap up our video for the day, we'd like to thank you all so much for watching, especially those of you who've made it here to the very end. Be sure you comment on any themes or ideas that you'd like to see in future videos. And also, since you made it this far, give us a like and hit that red subscribe button before you head out to take on the rest of your day. I hope to see you all in our next video, and let's keep sailing this giant sea together. Take care.